Welcome to another episode of the Coaches Club podcast, brought to you by halftimecouple.com. My name is Danny Cook, and I'm pleased to bring you another fantastic episode starring our guest for today, Quentin Hoad. Before we begin, you can catch up on any of our previous episodes on iTunes or on Spotify or on our website at halftimecouple.com. So, without further ado, let's welcome Quentin to the show. Quentin, how are you?
Yeah, doing very good. Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem. So, how are you coping during this lockdown period at the moment?
Yeah, doing okay. It's very different from usual life, especially being so practical with the things that we do. You know, you'll understand a lot of coaching. You're always out there, so there is no working from home as it is. So it's a lot. It's a very different, and missing football a lot. But the return of the German Bundesliga has helped a little bit.
Yeah, it's certainly been a glimmer of light, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So let's get into your journey, because I really want to find out where your story began and how you got into coaching. So would you mind just sharing that with us, how you originally got into coaching?
Yeah, so I guess where my story differs from a lot of people is that I didn't play football at the younger ages. I only sort of started playing football at about 15. So I came to football quite late, and then initially, even though I only started at 15, I sort of picked it up fairly quickly and got into it a lot, and sort of wanted to go professional as you do. And so I went to a college which played football every day, and their main focus was football, and they could guarantee you a scholarship to America because they got so much footage of you and stuff. So that was my initial plan. Upon going there, I realized I probably wasn't as good as I thought I was. But what it did give me the opportunity was to work, play under some really good coaches, and there was some playing under UEFA B coaches and UEFA A coaches. So I got a chance to look at what sort of quality coaching looked like. So it was about my second year of college where I started to get interested in that really, and that was when I first I volunteered at a local rugby club.
Oh wow!
It was it was someone that my mum knew, and they said that they needed a coach, and so my mum suggested me. I'm not a massive fan of rugby, but I was desperate to get into coaching, so that's how that started, and that was going into sort of different primary schools and sort of coaching the tag rugby side of it, and so that was my first coaching role, being an assistant there.
Oh wow! You know what? I knew that rugby coat suited you. That's why.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Quentin will come on to it later anyway. But he and I sort of crossed paths, and hence why this call is now on. But yeah, he one of these days we both had these massive rugby jackets on. It swamped me. Clearly it suited you. The rugby jacket was always there for you.
Yeah, rugby is a much colder sport to coach than football, and having your hands out to coach rugby you need those codes, I can guarantee you.
Anyway, sorry Quentin, carry on.
So yeah, that was my first sort of step into it, and then from there I started. That was my first sort of experience, so I could then look to do things that I could get into more football based roles, which is what I wanted to do. And so I then joined a summer football camp company. So that was then my first taste of football coaching. Wasn't with a club, but it was doing the sport which I wanted to do. So that was sort of a more facilitating role. So it was just about having the kids come. There wasn't really any focus on development so much. It was just about the fun and enjoyment. and keeping them engaged for a full days. But that was definitely a learning curve, because having to have kids for like sort of a 6-7 hour day is very different to the sort of 1-2 hour coaching sessions that I do now.
Was there a particular age group that you worked with there, or was you sort of used with a variety of age groups?
So the holiday camps would normally be primary school ages, so it would go up to about 11. So I mean, within that, there's obviously massive differing ages and abilities, but I would move around them depending on. I would normally, like when I first came in, I would be working with sort of the middlest ages, because that was deemed the easiest. But yeah, I did get the opportunity to work with the youngest and the oldest as well, which again can require completely different skill sets, depending on what age you're with, and they each require different, bring up different challenges. So good experience working with that.
Yeah, they certainly do. How just taking it back a little bit, but how did you come across that role? Was it for a friend of a friend, or was it because of the rugby coaching you did within or with primary school kids that sort of led on to you finding this holiday camp company?
No, so we didn't have any real connections to the company. It was just me wanting to make that change going into coaching football, and so I had to go out and actively look for that. So I think I found it online. I saw a job advertised, and at this point I think I knew I was going to complete my level 1 in the coming days, so that was kind of helpful to say that I was looking to do that.
What age was you at this point then? Level 1?
I was 17 at this point.
Great.
Yeah, and I didn't get my level 1 till later that year. So I was 18 when I actually got my level 1. Mm-hmm. But to say that I was going to do it was a bit of a help, I think, and also to have that previous experience coaching. I think if I'd applied sort of having no experience, no qualification, then I definitely wouldn't have got it. So I was glad to have done that volunteer rugby experience, just to sort of set me off.
Yeah, it certainly helps, doesn't it? Okay, so how long did you spend at this holiday camp company? Was it just like one summer or one holiday season, and then you moved on to your next step in your coaching career? Yeah,
so it was just a summer that I spent there, and then so that was just a summer job, and then obviously I couldn't carry that on while I was still attending college. So coaching sort of took a halt for a bit of that year. I did a bit of coaching with that company during the other holidays like Christmas and Easter. And then that went right through to the end of my last year at college, until I got my FA level 1.
Brilliant. Here we go. Good stuff. So you've now got your level 1. You're free to go and explore the coaching world, as they say. Where did you end up? What did you do with that level
1? So a massive influence for me was my university at the moment, which is UCFB. So I saw an advert for UCFB about halfway through my time at college, and I was looking into it, and the specifically the degree of football coaching and management, which I'm on at the moment, and it just looked so perfect for what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to go into coaching full time at this point, So I applied for that, and that became sort of my sole focus was getting into uni. And for uni, the prerequisite was getting a certain grade in my BTEC, as well as having my FA level 1. So although that was a pain to sort out, making sure because as you know, the FA certificates take a while to come. But so proving to the uni that I had actually done my FA level 1 when I'd only done it a few months before I needed to join was a bit stressful before that.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I got into UCFB. So I came to London that year, and then got my first proper coaching role with a team it was in October, because the university were suggesting that you always work alongside a team while at university as well. So I went out and looked for one, and luckily there was one right by where I lived, which I'm sure your listeners will know as Kinder FC.
It's a very popular buzzword.
Yeah, I bet.
That UCFB and Harry's come up quite a bit, so they're probably our buzzwords.
Yeah, I was going to say that leads me on, because I emailed Kinder FC and ended up having a interview with Harry himself, and he managed to find me a place with the under 13 girls, which I initially was supposed to join as an assistant, which I thought would be a good role, given I hadn't coached an actual team before. So it was all new to me. I hadn't been in that environment. I hadn't even played at under 13 level myself. So it was all very new to me. But within, I think it was a few weeks in, the manager had to leave for various reasons. And so I ended up with the manager job for the under 13 girls for the season, which was a very interesting learning experience for me.
I mean, incredible though. You've come in, and it's just sort of hoisted upon you pretty much early doors. But fair play to you for taking the challenge. Just by this point, had you have delivered your first sort of coaching session for UCFB yet? Had you done anything in your because I believe on your course it's probably more practical seminars. Did you do any actual delivery?
It is very practical. First term was sort of a lot of watching and taking it in. So we would it'd be the lecturers giving practical, so it was sort of more like being a player all the time, which was great fun. But no, so I hadn't actually delivered a session before. I'd never really planned my own session before, even at the summer camp company. It would all be planned out there, say, "Oh, do these games and take these kids," whatever. Whereas now it was me having to, an hour and a half session, and I've got to make a session plan by myself, which was new to me. But luckily, something that is so valuable being at UCFB is that you've got all these experienced coaches around you. You've got coaches your own age in the same boat around you. So I've got a plethora of people that I can go to and talk to if I have any questions, which has always been so handy.
Yeah, no doubt. So the reason why I come on to this question, I spoke to another coach. He used to coach. He used to do the course at UCFB. Again, spoke well about the actual experience. But he sort of enlightened me on how nervous he felt actually delivering that first session. I wondered if that was a shared experience for you as well when you delivered your first session. Was you nervous there compared to when you're delivering a bulk standard session somewhere else?
Yeah, 100%. He's spot on with that. It's different at UCFB because that everyone there is coaches. You've got way more experienced coaches watching you as well. So you're definitely nervous. You're trying to prove that you are a good coach in that. So there's definitely a lot to think about, but it's good because it pushes you and you're always thinking about it. Whereas sometimes you might go into cruise control when you're just coaching your normal team, but whereas when you deliver at UCFB, you're really sort of scrutinizing yourself and thinking about every detail, which is key, because you know that if you don't scrutinize yourself, then you're going to get your session's going to get picked apart by everyone else.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that first year it takes a while to get used to, is that your session is going to get slated in a constructive way, but you're going to get a bombardment of feedback, which you're not just going to get your, oh yeah, good session, that was fun. You're going to get a lot of detail, which takes a lot of getting used to in first year, but come second year you're grateful for it, and you'd much rather that your peers were giving you negative feedback that you can work on, rather than just saying, oh yeah, that was good. So it's definitely a different ball game when you're coaching at UCFB, but it's definitely worthwhile in the long run.
Yeah, and I can imagine that sort of that first year takes a bit of adjusting to go from a different mindset of you've got all these coaches here. Oh God, you don't want to put in a bad session or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like quite a unique experience in that sense.
Definitely.
Okay, just want to move it on slightly. Still with UCFB and your course so far, what would you say is the module or the area of study that you've enjoyed the most on your course?
So yeah, there's been a lot really. We cover a lot of different stuff, which is good. Some aren't as attached to maybe coaching as you'd like, but it's good to get that broad spectrum. You look at things like talent identification, which I suppose comes from more the scouts perspective, but also you can see how it can be utilized in your own coaching. The one for me that has stood out is the one that we did as most recently, was the term just gone, which was football tactics and strategies.
And what is that?
It's the first sort of module that goes into real detail about the 11-a-side game, and where the mindset is purely winning, and it's about how you can exploit your opponent's weaknesses and maximize your strengths, and it looks at the different formations and their weaknesses and strengths, and that's when you get a real chance to coach sort of an 11-a-side game at university, whereas prior to that, especially in first year, it's a lot about sort of the fundamentals of coaching, the development side, getting everyone just involved really, whereas this module was massive for being able to actually read the game and focusing on those tactics and strategies that ultimately make sort of the elite managers so good. So yeah, that's definitely been a fun one, because we've done a lot of 11-a-side stuff, but I think this term I've learned so much just from being able to see our lecturers as well coaching in that 11-a-side game, something that you don't get the chance to do so much in with your sides, youth sides especially, but to have a full sort of squad of 22 is going to be very rare at this sort of grassroots level. Yeah. So to be able to see a UEFA A coach who coaches at Reading Academy to do a full sort of match coaching session where he stops it and highlights things is really valuable experience.
I'm sure it is. Okay, brilliant. Have you got just sort of final question really on the UCFB element? But if someone was interested in doing the UCFB sort of coaching course that you're doing, or one of the variations of it, what sort of advice would you give to them before going on to the course?
So I say, well, so there's definitely a variety of courses. If you're looking to do coaching, football coaching and management, it certainly isn't the only one you can get into. I think you can pinpoint what job you want to go into, and there will be a course that will get you exactly on that path route at UCFB, which is so great about it if you're interested in that sport, and especially football. If you're going into football coaching and management, or any coaching degree, I'd say just try and get as much experience as possible, even if it's volunteering for a different sport that's not necessarily football. I think can be valuable. So even if you can't get a football role, get a role coaching rugby or cricket or tennis, because to be able to broaden sort of your coaching knowledge will be massive when you do come into coaching football. So get as much experience, get used to coaching out on the grass, and being able to talk in front of those groups of people. And then when you go, just don't be shy about it. Like, everyone's going to make mistakes there, but the more you sort of put into it and go, okay, yeah, when they say we need someone to take an arrival activity, just throw your hand up and go into it, because that experience there, where you're going to get a little bit of criticism afterwards, is going to have a massive positive effect on your coaching at your club.
Yeah, great advice there. Okay, so I want to revisit before we sort of went on a bit of a tangent there, which was Kinja and you working with the, I believe, under 13 girls team.
Yep.
So yeah, just talk me through. I mean, we don't need to go into too much detail, but just talk me through how you found that experience. Was there any lessons that you learned, and ultimately what happened as a consequence that sort of got you to where you are now, really?
Yeah, so lots of lessons, really, I suppose, dotted about throughout the season. So the initial challenge, I suppose, was that I was coaching by myself, so I didn't have any assistants or anything to rely on. So it was me making sessions week in, week out, which for my first season in football can be a bit draining. It's very consistent. You got to think of all these sessions up again and again. So that was sort of the first challenge, that it was also relying on me. Towards the end of the season, sort of second half, I managed to rope in a couple of my friends from UCFB to help me out, which was massive. And I think towards the end we had 3 of us coaching there, which was a massive help. We were able to split the girls up into 3 different groups, so we could work on the attack, defense, and goalkeeper, which was really beneficial for them. But yeah, I think when you're coaching by yourself, it's important to have maybe a season long, or at least a term long plan as to what you're going to cover at different points. I think that just helps you to plan things in advance and have a structure throughout. The approach I took was the putting out fire approach, which I'm sure a lot of new coaches often go towards, is to just see a match. What did we do bad? Okay, we'll do that. Which can have its benefits at points, but especially at younger ages, it's important that the girls get a wide variety of sort of football education, so that at the end of the season, you can say, yeah, I've taught them every principle of play in the attacking and defending, and you can say you've covered that. Also, it was all very new to me, so I'd never given a halftime team talk before.
How was that? How was that, delivering your first sort of halftime team talk or pre-match team talk?
Very very nerve-wracking, because there was a lot of things on match days that I was not very certain on at all. Like obviously I'd never had to deal with organising refs, like checking if they were there. I had no idea how to if I needed to go and check where the away opposition were, if we were the home team, and I'd needed to contact them. And there was so much going on match days. It was all a lot for me. And I didn't know if there were specific rules on where parents needed to stand. So I sort of had, the parents would come gather round at the half time, and I would say a few things, and it was things that I had noticed, but a lot of it was trying to fill the time rather than being sort of constructive, all things I was saying. So it would get a little bit waffly at times, I'm sure.
And then we've all done that.
And parents would then chip in as well when they would say their thoughts, which would bring up other challenges in terms of if I didn't necessarily think that was going to be the best thing. So there was a lot of different things going on, and I'd say match days was definitely one of the hardest parts for me, being new to coaching.
And I guess you alluded to it sort of earlier on, but match days, am I right in thinking you were by yourself, like you was the only coach there for that team?
Yeah. So even towards the end, when I managed to get other coaches to come to training, that they weren't available on match days for various reasons. So all throughout the season, it was me by myself taking them, which again is other challenges.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so what's your next steps following that team? Where did you go next?
So at the end of the season, I'd felt like I'd developed a lot as a coach, and I was looking maybe for a new challenge that was gonna push me more, because I believe if you start to feel comfortable in a coaching position, then you probably are in the wrong coaching position, especially at younger ages. I want to be pushing myself. So I spoke to Harry and had a chat with him about this, and said what I was looking to do, and he was really facilitating. He gave me a couple options as to where I could stay within Kinja but potentially challenge myself, and it was at that point that he mentioned that Prani, the manager of the ladies team, was looking for an assistant, and so that sounded like a great opportunity for me, definitely a massive step up, and it sounded like a great role. So I sent off my CV and everything to Prani that summer, and he got back to me saying that he'd love to have me on board. And so Brilliant. This season I've been assistant coach for the ladies first team.
Fantastic. And how have you found that sort of step up from youth football into adult football?
It's very different. I think working with Pirani has been a massive help. He's a very experienced coach, and he's I think we match up in terms of our coaching philosophies as well, in a sort of democratic approach where we like to keep things calm. It's about the players, and we do have a massive emphasis on development. So I think working with him has been a good transition into adult football. He's sort of been able to ease me into it with having that similar coaching styles. And in the women's game, I think there's a lot more development to be had in some cases. I think a lot purely because we've got women in our team that have only started playing maybe that season or the season prior, or have only maybe done a bit of five-a-side. So they learn very quickly and they're eager to learn. So having that development sort of approach is a massive part to how we coach. Whereas I think, a lot of definitely men's sides that I've played in, you've had players that have, everyone's sort of played since under 12, whereas women sort of find football a bit later potentially. So yeah, it's been a really good experience being able to work with an adult team and maybe take a step back being an assistant. So there's less of that pressure and being able to watch an experienced coach, which is I think what I needed in that first season, to be able to work alongside another coach.
Yeah. And I was actually just going to ask you, I know probably the situation is a little bit different, but is it something that through your experience with Camden, the women's side, that you would now prefer to have a secondary coach, an assistant coach with you on match days, to sort of bounce ideas off of, or whether you'd still, if given the opportunity, go solo by yourself again?
Definitely, I would always say to have another coach. I can't see any pros really from not having an assistant. I think even match days is something that if you're just one person by yourself, there's going to be things you're going to miss. I think there's too much to think about, like I said, with various organisation parts. If you're having to think about all that and deliver a team talk and think about tactics, it can be very, very draining, and you're bound to miss things. So having an assistant, things like on match days, me and Prane can split he takes attack, I take the defence, and then we can really look into the key details. It also allows for training sessions you can switch between you who's the lead coach, which means that one can not have to plan something, but they can also look into more detail while you're organising the session. They can really hone in on what's actually happening within it. And I think last season Prane was also coached by himself with the ladies team, so he was very keen to have an assistant, and we've sort of had chats about the various difficulties that there are, because obviously that means that if you're the only coach, you've got to be at every single training session and every single match, whereas it gave him a little bit more freedom having me there, that he could take some weeks off if need be.
Yeah, you know what, you're bang on the money there. I completely agree with all of that. For me as well, I don't know about you, but I end up having conversations with myself on the sideline. No one to talk to.
Yeah.
I end up chatting to the players, like So yeah, no, I completely agree. Okay, so you're still at Camden now, but there was also another opportunity that you went and pursued sort of last season. Do you mind just sort of delving into a bit more detail with that?
Yeah, this came as a big surprise, really, out of nowhere. It was late in the summer, maybe a few weeks before I'd start training with the ladies team, and Prane rang me up asking if I wanted a coaching job at a school, and it would be like 3 to 5 days a week or something like that, and it would be paid. And I was a bit unsure at first. I was thinking, I'm going back to uni, I've got a lot of things to do, and it's working in a school which I'd done before with after school clubs. So
yeah,
I wasn't too sure on it, but I said that Prane could give the person my contact details, and I'd speak with them, which he did, and I subsequently went in for a interview. So this was with the American school in London, and yeah, as I turned up, I with no thoughts really about what the school was or anything. I turned up, and it was a very nice school with security guards on the gate, which I had to get through and say I was here for a meeting. And then once I'd spoke to the head of the athletics department about what the job was, I mean, I was completely sold. It sounded like the absolute dream, and once working there, it really was. So I did 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, and on 3 of those days I took the junior varsity squad, which is sort of the under 15 squad age group, and then I also took the 7th grade girls team, which is about under 13 age group, so similar to what I'd been working with the season prior.
So, I mean, there you go. You've got the link with the under 13 girls anyway. So that's a bit more familiarity, I guess. And then you've got the, as you say, the JJV boys. How did you find that at first? Because was that the first time you'd coached boys that age before?
Yeah. So that was my first boys team and my first 11-a-side team, really. Because we started ASL before Camden had started, so that was my first experience working in 11-a-side, which was new to me, but I think there's things that I could take from my previous season. It wasn't completely redundant because it's a different gender, different age group. There's a lot of things I could take away from that. And it was a really, really good experience. And I'm glad that I've now been able to work in, different age groups and different genders. And the great thing about ASL is that the facilities there are amazing. And, to say that you have, the option of working on a full 11-a-side pitch, or you can switch to a 7-a-side pitch at any point within the training session is a luxury that a lot of coaches don't have. But it made it very easy and enjoyable for me to coach, that I could have that variety in my training sessions and do maybe more adventurous sessions that I hadn't been able to do before. That was a great experience. And as well, something that was new to me was having to work with a team that is considered the third team of the school. So there is a progression for boys to go up, and it's a big sort of mental side of it is how you can motivate the boys to want to work hard to be able to push up into JV and the varsity squad, which was a massive learning curve and something that was new to me.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing I was going to ask, actually. Having been in your shoes the year before, myself and another coach, we definitely felt those struggles when, and I don't know, I'm sure we spoke about it before, but whether you had like half a squad that was, really focused, really driven, really wanted to push on, and you had half a squad who was here to have fun, and both completely valid reasons, but that was the state of the team, really. Whereas the higher up you go, the more sort of focused and competition focused they are. I wondered if that was still the case with you, with your experience there.
Yeah, it really was, and which is hard to. You want that team unity, and if you can all share the same motivation, that's great. And for me, if I was in their shoes, I would definitely be varsity would be my main goal before I left that school. For other boys, it's different, which might be hard to get my head around at some points, that they're just there to have fun, which is perfectly valid. But for me, I'm a massive I want to push myself, and the competition is really important for me. But and I've got no problem if it's, you know, that everyone wants the main goal to be fun. It's like, yeah, we don't care about that, then that's fine. But when you've got, you know, two different, that's when the challenges start to come in, and you've got to sort of accommodate for both. I think, you know, one of my mistakes might have been waiting until sort of halfway through the season when I realised that people had different motivations. It was then that I asked who actually wants to get JV next season, who wants to get varsity by the end of their school time, that I realised that there really was a big disparity between.
Yeah.
But once I'd done that, I was able to sort of have that maybe individual focus at points. So it's like we can have a fun session that has got some development, but I can say to this person who wants to make varsity, I can say, why don't you try only having 2 touches? And they then get more enjoyment from that, knowing that they're getting that work and they're getting all the coaching that they can to try and complete their goal.
Yeah, you're bang on there. How did you find the managing up process? Because this is something that I'm still sort of trying to, and I you know what, I think it's something that you can never perfect. I think you can deal with it, but I feel there's probably always ways that you can better the situation. How did you find sort of managing up when you're losing players as such to myself, because I'm losing players to varsity? Like, how was that process for you?
Well, so I think first of all, it was made as easy as it could be by by you guys, other coaches. That communication was always there, and so the reasoning behind, it wasn't like a competition. It was, we know that we're all on the same program, and we're trying to get players to varsity at the end of the day. So that progression is good to see. But obviously, we've all got our own teams that we have got to think about. And of course, there's the psychology of seeing other players moving up, or if a player does move up for one game, but then comes back into my squad, and how that can work with one of the players' psychologies. But I think one of the first people that got called up was the person that had just been voted as the captain for my team, which of course was difficult, and him himself was sort of in turmoil about whether he should go or not, because we had quite a few chats together about whether he thought he should stay and be this sort of leader for the JJV squad, or whether he should push himself. And ultimately he came to the decision that he did want to push himself, and I think he got a lot of enjoyment and definitely benefited from moving into the JJV squad. But then I'm left, which is great for him, and I was happy to see that. But of course I'm left with then a squad that is now lost their voted in captain, which was hard to see. And unfortunately, when a lot of them wanted to have the fun, I can't use him as a role model to motivate yourself into that team as well, because a lot of them didn't care about going into that team. They just wanted to play with their mate who had now gone into that team. But I think you've got to be able to understand that the people they do want to move, and I think the players do eventually understand that, and you just got to create as best team unity as you can, knowing that players are going to come up and down as the season goes on.
Yeah, and I just wonder, with that sense, did you, again, you don't have to go into any detail on this, but did you have to sort of amend your approach on game day based off of obviously players that you no longer had for either a specific game or sort of going forward?
I think I should have done, but I didn't. I think I had this whole plan set out of how we were going to play, and a lot of it actually relied on the player that Len left, which I probably should have seen a lot earlier, but it left a defensive midfield role, which we didn't really have anyone else in the squad, and I tried to maybe shoehorn players into that role rather than looking at other ways to adapt the style of play. So I think that's something I'm going to look at going into next season is the look at the players I've got and then make sure that the system fits them, and we can highlight the strengths of the players rather than sort of forcing players into positions of a formation that I think would work.
Yeah, great point there. I think you've kind of touched on it as well there in terms of lessons that you've sort of learned and that you would look to address next year. And this is the thing when I've felt whenever I've coached there is there always seems to be lessons. You learn lessons, I think, a lot quicker in that environment, and there seems to be lots more of them. And maybe it's because it's a shorter season. That's up for debate, I guess. But I guess the question now would be, what if you had to sort of restart the season now, what would be the lessons that you would look to address now?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's sort of a weird one, ASL. It's kind of like a different environment. It's sort of the team that I use for my lessons, my trial and error. I think this could work, and that's the team. I'd use that on them, and I learn things a lot quicker there. And it's something that I think about all throughout the year. If I get a good idea, I'm like, oh, this is something I could use at ASL. So yeah, there's a few things, I suppose. There's a lot of questions that come up, I guess, because you spend a lot of time with the kids in such a short space of time that you see different things that you don't necessarily see with your grassroots teams. I suppose there's things like the players often come out earlier than when the session sort of would normally start. That's because we have a big chunk of time, and if they happen to get there early, then sometimes you don't want to start too early as they burn out by the end, and you sort of want to space it. But there's things I've been thinking about to maybe try and keep them engaged, not spending too much of their energy early on before we get to the actual meat of the session. So I've done a lot of sort of reading, listened to some podcasts as well. There's some interesting theories about companies that give their employees, like, I can't remember what company, it might be Google or something, but they give their employees like 20% time, which means that 20% of their time they can do basically whatever they want, as long as, so like they have their scheduled time in, and then they have the 20% where they can basically do whatever they want. And if they come up with ideas that they can bring to the company, then great. And the company just says, as long as you get your work done, you can have this 20% off time, basically. I was wondering about things that we could bring into that, where there's so much equipment at ASL. You could say, okay, boys, you've got 20 minutes. You can work on whatever you want, whether that be shooting, defending. If you just come to me with like a planned thing that you want to do, then you can do that for 20 minutes. And then potentially that might be a way that they can get more engaged. They can get their shooting out early if they want to do it, as long as it's in like a structured way. And then hopefully that might bring a little bit more focus to the actual session.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, actually. I think you are correct. I'm pretty sure it is Google. Okay. Wait for the corrections to fly in. But
yeah.
I'm pretty sure I've heard that one as Google. Okay. That's interesting. You mentioned, like, sort of right at the start of that answer about trial and error coaching. Now, I wondered if this was something that you considered to be a quality that a really good coach needs to have.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it can maybe sound a bit like, oh, you need to give the players, your best. You can't be trialing things and wasting a session. But I think as a coach, you need to be learning, and if you're not making mistakes, then you're not learning at all. So you need to be able to have that, and I think it's a one-off mistake, and then every session after is going to be better for it. Whereas if you stick to the same thing over and over again, you're just learning the same thing over and over again. So if someone once said that if you're coaching the same thing for 10 years, then you're not a coach with 10 years experience. You're a coach with 1 year experience of 10 years of the same thing. So I think you've got to have that variety and be able to try things, make mistakes, and then you learn from it, and you're just constantly improving your coaching throughout.
Yeah, I like that little phrase. That was good. That little saying there. That was very good. Okay, so just to sort of bring to a conclusion that your coaching journey from this year just gone, what would you say has been your highlight for you personally?
So ASL has been a big part for me. I think it's developed my coaching a lot, being able to work that much in such a short space of time, being able to coach and learn from it, as we talked about.
Doesn't necessarily have to be ASL. Can be with Camden. I just meant more so in the past year. If there's been maybe not just one highlight, maybe there's a few that are kind of similar level, but just moments that you feel really pleased about on reflection.
Okay, I'll do two then. So there's one which was with Camden Ladies, which that was when we had an okay start to the season, and then we had a bit of a dip. And there was just one sort of match where we really didn't play well. Me and Prani are driving home, and he just sort of said, like, what can we do to turn this around? We both went and had a think, and eventually I was looking at it, and I decided that our formation probably didn't suit how we were playing. I think it was a 4-3-3, but really we didn't score from crosses a lot, so the width wasn't really helping us, and we needed to bolster our defence. So I suggested changing to a 5-3-2, and I think it was the next game. So the first game we played with that formation, we against a team we weren't expecting to beat. I think we went on to win 2-0, which was that was just a real a buzz that I hadn't really sort of experienced before, when you make that sort of call and it pays off massively like that. The other one, I think probably my main highlight would be, I suppose if I was going to chop it down into a small, like a day, it would be I delivered a 30-minute session at university towards the end of the term, which was just to sort of put into practice, I suppose, everything that we'd learned. And I think that 30 minutes is really one of my best sort of coaching that I'd done. And I looked at myself and was like, how far I've come since the year before. I mean, it's really been building across. I think this whole term has been massive for me, but to see it in that 30 minutes of having the confidence to pause the session, give the coaching detail, the one-to-ones, that a lot of things that I hadn't been putting into my sessions, I was able to, and had started to with Camden and stuff as well. So I think, that term, and specifically that session, I think it's been a big turning point for me.
Nice. So just building on from that, really, and I've got a few, I hope you don't mind, a few general questions about your coaching journey, if that's okay. So let's go back to what you mentioned. Obviously, you doing a bit of rugby coaching. Is there any transferable skills that you picked up between coaching rugby and coaching football?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of similarities in the coaching styles and just general sort of coaching of kids. I think probably the main thing that I picked up, which was useful going into the under 13 girls team, was with the tag rugby. There's a lot of, well, we were working in primary schools, and there was a lot of fun games and stuff that I hadn't been exposed to before, especially not playing football at younger ages. So I don't know if they would have done games like these, but there was a lot of fun games that just involved running and, you know, getting balls from one place to the other, and that would involve the core skills of rugby, which I was then able to transfer into football pretty much by just putting the ball on the floor rather than holding it in your hands. So I think, yeah, a lot of those sort of games I took notes as I was coaching, because I knew they'd come in handy eventually. Also in rugby, I think there is a lot of detail on individual things. So like passing, because that can be very alien to kids, the type of passing, you know, they sort of want to throw it one-handed or whatever. So you have to go into the detail of the hands on the ball placement and the wrist movement that would be needed. So I think that's something that can go amiss in football coaching. Sometimes it's easy, you know, if they're turning up to football training, they know that they pass with the foot, and I think, you know, most people will pass, you know, well enough that it can get sort of missed by coaches, that they don't go into that detail. I certainly haven't seen a coach that's actually broken down the elements of passing at younger ages, which I think is something that can be really useful, and that's something that I was able to utilize from having that with the rugby coaching and put into the under 13 teen girls team, which was just breaking down the elements of passing and which type of pass to use. And then some might not pick that up straight away, but it was at least in their head so that they know, okay, that actually probably wasn't the right pass. And if they go home and practice, then they have that information, even if you don't spend too much time on it in the training session. If it's just telling them in 10 minutes of a little bit of practice, you know, you don't have to drill it in for half an hour. Just them having the information can be really useful. Yeah,
and just building on from that, really, did you have a preference as to coaching boys or girls?
I don't think so. I mean, they're both very, very different. Obviously, I haven't coached boys and girls of the same age group yet, so there could be some differences there. But I think they're both a lot of fun. To be fair, I thought going into it that I would, and I'd want to coach boys more. But I guess that was just what I knew. But actually, having coached both, there isn't really a preference. I seem to have more experience working with girls at the moment. But who knows? I'd be happy to go into either. Really, both great fun.
Nice. Looking back, was there ever a coach that really stood out to you that inspired you to become the coach you are?
So I suppose there was one coach at college who was really helpful. Like when I said I wanted to be a coach, he was helping me out loads and would talk to me during sessions and point things out, which helped on my sort of progression to university. And then I think at university, obviously we've got so many great coaches available, and they're all really helpful. But I think one coach that stands out is Kevin Green, who he works at London FA. I think he's the London FA regional tutor. But yeah, he's been a massive help. I think just because he's able to sort of read how much effort people are willing to put in, and he can see that about your coaching, and he'll give you feedback, according to that. So there's some people on my course that don't really coach outside much and don't put as much effort in, and so their feedback, they don't get as much from him because he can tell they're not putting in the effort. Whereas if you show you are, then he comes in with really good feedback, and he gives you that next level stuff, that sort of UEFA B feedback that I'm looking to progress onto.
And just on some of that feedback you've had, I guess, I really want to sort of hone in and try and find out from you what you believe your strength is as a coach.
So I think I've always sort of seen myself more as a people sort of person. I like to focus my sessions around the players themselves. So I think probably my ability to convey across to the players what it is we're trying to achieve in each session, keeping everyone engaged in the session, is probably something that I'd say is one of my strengths. And then maybe the tactics side and the element is something that I need to go into more detail on and work on.
Yeah, well, I'm in the same boat there. I need to work on that as well, so don't worry. I think it's one of those things that you can never stop learning and never stop developing in. So that's a fair point. What would you say makes a great coach? What qualities do you think a great coach sort of possesses?
So the first one that I'd always say to any coach is you need to be adaptable, and I think that's something that is really crucial, to be able to change your style, your tactics to suit the situation that you're in, whether that's because of the age group, the gender, how well you know the people. There's so many different factors in football that you can't have a one size fits all approach. It just doesn't work, in my opinion. So I think you've got to be able to be adaptable, and that will come with the trial and error, I suppose, as well. If you're willing to try different things, make those mistakes, then you're going to have a bigger arsenal of coaching approaches that you can utilize.
Cool. And I know we touched on it earlier in terms of obviously what gender you had if you had a preference to coaching, but was there an age group that now that you've sort of had a taste of a couple different age groups, was there an age group that you preferred working with, or were they all did they all possess sort of positives and you can't choose between them?
They definitely do have their positives. So I liked with the under 15s, it was 11th side. I could be a little bit more serious, and I could, really drive sort of the best out of the players by saying, that they probably expected better than from themselves if they weren't, hitting the mark, work rate wise and concentration wise. So I enjoyed that. But then with the under 13 age group, that was also a time where I could turn up and be a little bit silly with my coaching and could really, have fun with it. And yeah, especially with the under 13 girls, they have a lot of different fun during sessions that I don't know if the would be the same with under 13 boys, but getting involved with TikToks and stuff at the end of season. So yeah, it's pros and cons. I think more long term, I'd probably be more inclined to work with sort of maybe older age groups. But it's definitely great fun working with the younger ages.
Yeah, there's no denying that. What, if any, sort of thinking back to when you first sort of stepped into coaching, were there any challenges that you faced because you entered the game so late from a playing perspective?
Yeah, there definitely has been a lot of challenges, things like not knowing maybe the classic football fun games that you might do at younger ages that most people that have played at that age would know. General things like match day organization, how things ran generally. I had little idea on how things would actually go, and only playing 2 seasons of youth football, I didn't have much chance either getting to pick up on what the coaches did and how that changes throughout the age groups as well. So I only had really 1 or 2 coaches before I went to college. So it's haven't been able to pick up as much different coaching styles or different sessions and drills, but I suppose going to college helped out with that, where I was able to pick up a lot of advanced sessions and doing that 5 days a week, sort of compacted a lifetime of football into 2 years, which was helpful. But yeah, definitely at the younger ages, missing out on that definitely means that I was had a bit of catch up to do in my first season.
If someone sort of listening in was in a similar position to you back then, what sort of advice would you give someone who wants to get into coaching but has sort of entered the playing side quite late? Was there any bits of advice that you would give them at all?
So starting out, I suppose, if you do go into a coaching role, you can do research on that age group. There's loads of sessions online, but if you can go and watch other coaches, if you're part of a club and you can go and watch the different age groups. I spent 2 weeks with the under 5s, under 6 sort of sessions at Kinja before I went to the under 13s, which was really helpful because they do a lot of fun games and stuff, which might not always be 100% football development. It's about getting the kids used to kicking a ball in a fun way. So if you can go and experience the other age groups, just watch coaches, even if it's just watch one session, you can pick up on their style and approach. Even if you don't agree with it or you think they're not doing it great, you can watch it and go, okay, I wouldn't do it that way, but if they'd done it like this, and then you can put that into your own session. And then you can. I watched online when I first took the under 13s. I watched YouTube clips of under 13 girls tournaments and things like that to have a gauge of what standard I'd be working with and the sessions and stuff and the play style. So yeah, you can pick up experience from loads of different things just watching, and you've just got to throw yourself at it to make sure you're learning as much as possible.
Brilliant. And just on top of that, really, what advice, if you had some, for sort of a young coach who is stepping into an environment where there's lots of older people around them, any advice as to how that young coach can obviously better themselves and make their situation a success, really.
So yeah, it's been, there's challenges of being a young coach in an environment where you might have there's a lot. Average age of coaches could be sort of 40 or so. You get a lot of old coaches. I'm quite lucky that at Kindred, we've got a wide variety. You have a lot of young coaches at Kindred as well, so it felt like a more known environment to me. But as a young coach going in, you gotta throw yourself at it, get as much experience as you can. It is going to be a lot of volunteering, and I would say you got to get a variety of experience early on. So obviously it's hard because you don't want to be the journeyman kind of thing where you keep changing team. But I think if you're willing to stay within a club and maybe change age group, get different experience of that, then I think most clubs will be willing to accommodate that. And I think just don't let your age hold you back. There's been a few opportunities where you might look at it and think, oh, I'm too young for this, I haven't got enough experience. I never would have thought I'd be coaching an adult team at age 19. I was when I started. So it is daunting at first, but you got to throw yourself at it, apply for jobs, roles, even if you don't think you're going to get it, because if you get an interview or whatever, then that itself is going to be a good experience. So just always be challenging yourself, especially at younger ages. You've always got to be pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, because if you're getting comfortable, then you're not developing as much as you could be.
Great advice there. Great advice. We're down to our final two questions, Quentin, and I promise you these ones will be quick ones. So thank you for your time. So yeah, the penultimate question would be, what have you been doing during lockdown in terms of coaching wise to either develop yourself or with the Camden ladies side? Like, are you doing anything during this lockdown that helps your coaching essentially?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to have chats with the middle school director at ASL, who's very experienced within the game of football, and he's been helping me a little bit with sorting out my online profile. So LinkedIn is a massive one for me, and having that organized and looking good can make a massive difference, which I think a lot of young people, I certainly wasn't aware of it, where it could be used in the football sense. I just thought it was for business kind of people. But if you can get on LinkedIn, it's massive. If you're a younger coach, just get your experience out there, and you can connect with people. I've been messaging a few various people trying to get video calls where they can just tell me about their experience, or arranging things going forward to potentially shadow academy coaches. So I was fortunate enough to talk to someone who's doing an online course at UCFB, but he's actually currently one of the 4 people who's on the FA's elite coach mentorship.
Oh wow!
So he's getting loads of experience working with England sort of youth teams and being thrown into that elite environment, which is what that program does. So to be able to talk to him about his experience into getting that is been really valuable, and I can now introduce some of that into my coaching.
Most definitely. Okay, so we've arrived at the final question. Well done, Mr. Quinnan. So I guess really the place to end would be for us to find out what your ambition is longer term in terms of your coaching. Do you have aspirations of getting to the top, or are you happy staying at a grassroots level?
So this is something that I think is really important, that you've got to let people know what you're aiming to achieve. So for me, I do. I see myself in first team management, and I've sort of said to myself that I want to definitely at some point be managing a sort of at least semi-professional men's team within the next sort of 10 years or so. And that's because I think that's something that I've wanted to do, and I need that experience. Whether that's going to be something I do long term and stick with, I don't know. It's something I need to experience before I can say whether I want to do it or not. But the dream for me would be, at the moment, I see would be working professional football, being the manager of a top club, men's or women's. So that's where I see myself at the moment. Various different things that I need to experience first, like academy, football, a men's grassroots team. So these are all things that I've got to pick up. But yeah, I do first team management is where I see myself, and the higher I can climb, the better.
Yeah, certainly, and I'm sure you can make that. I'm sure you can do that. And best of luck on that journey. But
thanks very much.
We're obviously rooting for you. So that brings us to the end of today's show. Quentin, how can anyone listening in follow you on social media should they wish to?
So yeah, I've got Twitter's probably the best one. I'm sure if you just type in Quentin Hoad, it'll come up. There's not too many of Quentins out there, so should be fairly easy. I post some coaching stuff on there, so that'll probably be the best place to go.
Okay, brilliant. And you can also follow Halftime Cuppa on Twitter using our handle at halftime_Cuppa. And my personal account is at DannyCook1996, should you wish to follow some tweets about Norwich. As mentioned at the start of the show, all the previous episodes are now available to catch up on our website, halftimecuppa.com, as well as iTunes and Spotify, just by searching for Halftime Cuppa. Thank you again, Quentin, for coming on today and sharing your knowledge.
Thanks very much for having me.
Not a problem at all. And until next time, stay safe and goodbye.